the Astros play the Rockies, it was not a great story, but the Astros are hoping it's a different story. And we will be talking to Paul Holden of the Locked On Rockies podcast to see if it could be a better story for the Astros this time around. So we'll talk about this more and about the Rockies playoff roster, because that's the only way they could sweep the Astros earlier this season. We'll talk about this and more on today's Locked On Astros podcast.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chancey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talks Astros. You can find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett, where can you find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter and at Stros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros.
You're still positive after losing 3 games in a row or whatever we're at?
Yes, I am. Always. Why? Because we're still in first place. All the losing, and we're still in front of the Oakland A's.
I don't think it's actually 3 games in a row. I think we've only lost 2 games.
Yeah, we've lost three or four to the Twins.
3, 4, whatever.
But hey, but Eric, we got a guest here. Right here, right below, right
you
here.
Where?
Yes,
Where
we do. He's right there. He's got to pull his name up. Boom, look at that.
Oh, there he is. I see him now. Paul Holden of the Locked On Rockies podcast. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. The Rockies have played some great ball at home, and now they have a really, really tough road trip. So I'm going to savor in winning Rockies baseball as long as I can, because it's going to be a tough road ahead for the Rockies this week.
So who's going to start game 1 in the playoffs for y'all?
Well, of course, we're going to Germán. I mean, he is the stud. He is the ace of the team. We're going to him no matter in the do or die. Probably going to end up in the wild card, I'd imagine. You know, a lot of chasing we have to do. This division's pretty good, but yeah, you know, we're gonna rely on Germán, and you know, if we wanted to go a little crazy, maybe we'd go back to John Gray, who's been looking sharp. But Germán's our number one for sure.
So going back to that series versus the Astros, it was at your home, of course, and it was like really snowing that game. And like the picture for my thumbnail we have earlier, it has a whole bunch of snow everywhere. And so it's a different situation. I know back then the Astros were still playing good baseball, and they just hit a brick wall. And it just seemed like the Rockies were just playing great baseball at the time. What happened, and what's going on with the Rockies right now?
The Rockies just went on to start the season and to go pretty deep into the season being a historically bad team on the road. It was really that was it. And the starting pitching took a while to get to the point where it is at now. I mentioned Germán Marquez. He didn't start the year as good as he is now. He's really come alive and really gone after batters here since right before the All-Star break and after. So that's really been the big thing. The Rockies just struggle to play good baseball on the road, and the offense continues to struggle. It's something we've been worried about for a few years now. Even pre-big trade with the Rockies this offseason, the offense was underperforming there as well. So this is just a team that couldn't win on the road and didn't win its first road series until the Padres series right before the All-Star break. So that's the real issue there was the inconsistencies across the team. When one part of the team was playing well, the other was struggling, and the bullpen has not helped the Rockies in close games whatsoever this year at all.
So what's it been like for the Rockies? We know Arenado is a huge part of this ball club, and it seems like that you get these stars. You have guys, Blackmon has hung on. Him and Trevor Story are your position players that are really the keys to the Rockies' success whenever they do have it, or even at home. What's it been like without Arenado not out there? Does this team have a major void in it? Was that part of their underperformance at the beginning of the year offensively because their leader was gone?
I think I think the wound will never heal, but I think acceptance has come to a lot of Rockies fans. And I think it took the first series playing the Cardinals on the away when we first went to St. Louis and played them there. First time lining up against Nolan. It was a good week. It was my first weekend doing the show too, so I had to reflect on that. So my first episode, I was basically reflecting on the Nolan trade. It really, for me, it hasn't sunk in until after he came to Coors Field. The fanfare's there. He came back. It's done. He's now, every time he comes after that, it's a visiting player coming to the clubhouse. But yeah, I think Nolan leaving has had a bigger impact on the team than most might think. Trevor Story and him believed that they were the foundation for the Rockies going forward, and then they finally had this pitching staff. The Rockies really were only just a couple pieces away from competing before, and I still think competing this year. If the Rockies had a CJ Cron playing first base in 2018 with his production with that team of Nolan, DJ, Story, and Blackman, and Herman was still pitching well, Kyle Freeland, John Gray, most of these pieces. There's a 2021 where the Rockies are in the thick of the playoff race this year. I really believe that. But yeah, him leaving really messed with the team, I think. But there were pieces able to fill in. Ryan McMahon is a great player. He's been a great defensively. That's been the big thing, was, are we going to miss out on these Nolan plays? Ryan McMahon's been terrific at third base, filling in there. It's just, yeah, that offense has been down, but that's been a bit for a while. That's for everyone and across the Rockies. And I for me, it was tough. I was of the fan. I'm in the mindset of, I was hoping he was here for the whole 8 years, finishes his career. I was kind of in the mindset that he was going to be there. And I don't know. I'm still not, as much as great as Austin Gomber's been, I'm still not happy with the situation, mostly because the GM that made the trade left 2 months later. If you're going to drastically change the Rockies this much, stick with that direction, because we still don't fully understand the direction of the team right now. Interim GM, people missing in the front office, Trevor Story doesn't get moved, John Gray doesn't get moved. So we're trying to piece together where the Rockies are. But I would say the wound is as healed as it's going to be, I think, for me, and I think a lot of other Rockies fans too.
All right. So first of all, Brett, happy birthday. You're the big, 60 or what?
No, come on, man. I'm 46, bro. 46. Don't be flipping my age like you do when we I mean, that's almost like comparing the Twins and the Astros record. That's why I couldn't believe the Twins were beating us. Thank you.
Speaking of which, you brought up something. So, Paul, I'm a math teacher, and I need to ask you something. All Astros fans are wanting to know, with the way the Astros play against sub 500 teams. So the Rockies' record is 51-61 as we speak right now. Mm-hmm. Their winning percentage is 0.455. So as a math teacher, I could technically round that up, since that's a 5 and behind a 5 is a 5. So that'll round that up to a 6, and now round that up to a 5. So would you consider yourself a sub 500 baseball team?
I truly think the Rockies could be a 500 team or right above. I think their record is makes them look worse than they are. This is a team that's insane at home. I mean, you don't play these. We play where we've beaten the Padres most of the year. The series, I think the Padres have only beaten the Rockies once or twice this year, and that's both at home and away. It's just tough when the Rockies have so much that was going against them. They've really played great ball in the last 2 months. They're still not playing that great on the road, but it's better. I think if the Rockies were just a bad road team, not a awful, almost near historic bad team on the road, you could definitely see them as a 500 team. But I wouldn't place them any higher than a game or two above 500. I think if the luck started bouncing the Rockies' way, bullpen was a little bit more tight, the offense picks it up. This is a team that's a couple games above 500, still not in the playoff conversation, though, I don't think.
I mean,
so you're saying the Astros have a chance?
Yes, I'm.
Well, I think. Well, here's the thing. I think they have a chance because I think they have one of the records that has the most disparity between the home and away. I mean, 13-40 on the road versus 38-21, and you guys are only 10 games under 500. You would think with the 14 or 13 and 40, you would think that you guys would only have like 30 wins.
Right.
But and that's the thing. So we know that one of the big conversations in Houston is Carlos Correa and all these shortstops coming up.
Right.
Javi Baez got moved. He's injured. Lindor is injured. All these shortstops moving hands. Trey Turner. We know Seager is all but probably gone and over there in Lost Again, Dodger Town, and all this stuff, right? Yeah, I have no animosity towards the Dodgers at all. I love them with all my heart, not. But anyways, I digress. Trevor Story is having a good bounce back half of the season. He's very talented. He's an unrestricted free agent. Do you see someone like him being a player that will get around, how much will that guy get? 200 million, 250 million? Because the way it looks right now, the Astros don't seem like they're willing to pony up. Now, if they do pony up, I'll be glad.
Right.
But do you think Trevor Story could land in Houston possibly?
Yeah, I think Trevor Story wants to play for a contender. I don't necessarily think if he's going to make a lot of money to play for a team that's not that great, I think he'd go home to Texas or he'd stay in Colorado, to be totally honest, and try to see what they can build on. If the Rockies are able, before he signs elsewhere, if the Rockies do go out and bring in some free agent bats, like some people believe they might do, then it might be interesting for Story. I think it's very possible he could end up in a Houston. He can end up anywhere that is going to pay him. I think he is, and he thinks of himself as a top 5 shortstop in the league. So he's going to want that top 5 shortstop money. I can see a 4 to 5 year deal somewhere in that that $175, $200 million. I think it might be tough. I think it's tough. Some Rockies players, when they go to free agency, got to deal with the whole Coors Field thing, but take just the offense out of it. Trevor Story is an elite defender. He's going to bring a great defensive presence to your team. I don't know if you saw the highlight from this weekend. He makes a great diving stop while in the shift, throws a ball perfectly to Brendan Rodgers, and who beat
I saw that.
Base. And you're going to get those plays. You're going to get behind the back tags. You're going to get elite defense, and Trevor's dealt with a little bit of elbow discomfort. He's dealt with the Nolan trade. He's dealt with the trade deadline. There's a lot of mental stuff that Story's had to deal with this year. But now that the deadline's passed, and I think he's in that mindset of, I got 2 months left here, and then I'm, the door is open. I can fully see he's on an 11-game hitting streak. In his last 7 games, he's batting over 400. He's got 2 home runs. He's got a bunch of RBIs. He's hitting the ball well. He looks like he has his swagger and confidence that we know Trevor Story to have. So I think him being on Houston is definitely an option. But I think at the end of the day, I think he's going to try to get paid. I think he wants to capitalize. It's going to be tough, though, because this is a very, very shortstop heavy a free agent class. There's gonna be a lot, but that also could drive up the price. If they might not have been able to make a deal for Story for the 2-month rental. Now they can actually go out and instead of trading draft picks, prospects, and things like that, they can just put money on the line and be like, hey, here, come play for us. We're competitive and we'll pay you a big chunk of money.
Story on the Astros team. That sounds like a fantasy lineup, like something you'll see on Stat Hero. So Brett, tell us a little bit about Stat Hero.
Okay, so Stat Hero is a new and exciting way to it's going to be Bet Online. Bet Online is your online sportsbook experts. When you bet on all the sports action, baseball season's in full swing, and you can track all the action in Bet Online. Get all the latest news, odds, and information on all your sporting needs, including MLB, NBA, NHL, and or UFC action. Before the next pitch, head over to Bet Online on your laptop mobile device and check out all the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for the run for the playoffs. Head to the website, use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, your online sportsbook expert. Promo code Locked On.
Alrighty, and so what about if you want to go watch that game? Where's a good place to go watch the game at?
So the game for us, if you're listening in Houston, you need to write down this address, 20796 Gulf Freeway in the Florida Core parking lot. It is the Hooters in the NASA Webster area. Come see your favorite Hooters calendar girls in cutoff jeans and cowgirl boots and dance to Copperhead Road. $15 buckets, $5 crafts, and more every Thursday. But you can come hang out Tuesday. There's no cover charge. Whenever UFC comes to town, you can watch it there. If you miss tickets to the big events and the big games, you can go watch any action that you want. Sports across the globe there at Hooters. Hooters and Webster has good wings, cold beer, and the world famous Hooters Girl. There's never a cover charge. So check them out. When you go there, tell Rosie that the Locked On Astros cast sent you there, and we hope that you have a good time, some good buds. So bring a friend and hang out at Hooters Webster.
Alrighty, so let's go and take a look at what's happening in this series. So your team is pretty hot recently. I see that they've scored a lot of runs recently. Right. I think they've scored 14, 7, and 13 runs in the last 3 games. What's going on?
Taking advantage of bad teams playing at home. That's one thing, and they're doing something they haven't done all year long, which is it's. And I know. Everyone, I know we're live on the YouTube. I've loved seeing the comments. It's very fun for me. This is cool. But, the Rockies haven't hit home runs this year. They have not been able to put a ball over the wall, whether that be at home or on the road. They were a bottom 5 team in baseball, and I think they still remain in terms of season totals in the bottom half. They are hitting all the home runs right now. It's all come out in these past few games. Multi-home run games from Connor Joe and CJ Cron yesterday. CJ Cron is hitting the ball extremely well, especially when it comes to the long ball. So that's the big reason the Rockies were able to go 5 of 6 at home in this past stretch, was because not only were they playing the depleted Cubs and a Marlins team, but the Marlins have a similar record to the Rockies when you look at that. They got it done with the long ball. And again, great starting pitching, but boy, that bullpen loves to make games interesting or make your heart race a little bit more than it should. Those Rockies had those games well in the driver's seat, but then I tune in later and it's a 13-8 game instead of a 13-2 game. And it's like, that just can't happen.
Brett, I'll let you talk about it, but let me go and talk about the first matchup, and I'm going to illustrate it. Okay, you ready? The first pitching matchup, it's going to be John Gray versus Jake Odorizzi. It's a perfect matchup for us Astros fans to watch. So what do y'all think about it?
Well, I think Jake Odorizzi, he hopefully sets up nicely against a team that's not hitting home runs. And hopefully they don't take advantage of anything he leaves over the plate. If Odorizzi has fixed what he had not working for him in LA when he gave up the 4 home runs, I think they'll do fine. But Paul Holden, you'll be glad to know that Odorizzi just gave up a ton of home runs to LA in Dodger Stadium. And he even said afterward, it sucks to suck. Like he said himself, he knew he didn't have his best stuff, and Odorizzi's been working through some things. He is 4-6 with a 4.95 ERA, only 57 strikeouts. We do face one of your aces or one of your better pitchers, John Gray. He is 7-7, and I think probably the 7 losses may have more to do with the offense that's not backing him up versus his performance on the field. And Fernando is predicting that Odorizzi is going to pitch a no-hitter against the Rockies. Now, this is what I hope, Holden. No offense, but I hope that y'all have used up all your hits and all your home runs, and then you come to the ballpark. Because, see, the Astros typically will have a massive game where they'll score 12 runs, and then the next game they won't score any. So I'm really hoping you leave the bats and the runs and the home runs and don't bring them to Minute Maid Park, because Odo can give them up.
And that just like we've been talking about, that's the classic story. The Rockies will do that. They will score a lot at home. They'll score a lot and then nothing. And what's interesting, especially with these matchups, when you go into the AL and you're crossing paths, not a lot of experience for either sides of these pitchers. The Astros have a couple more looks at John Gray than the Rockies have there on their end. So it'll be interesting to see what that means for the club. But that's the true test. Every time when the Rockies do string together something good this season is, all right, they played well at home. They've played well lately. How are they going to take that and translate it to the road? Because now is a quick 2-game set with the Astros, but then it doesn't get any easier with the trip to San Francisco right after that. So the Rockies, if they want to be successful this road trip, hitting is something they're going to have to do, because Their starters are great, but it's baseball. Things can happen. Runs can be scored even against the best of them. And you really don't want to rely too much on that bullpen, which is at full strength now. The Rockies had a little bit of COVID issues with their fifth starter and some of their bullpen pieces, but they do have some of the better bullpen pieces there. However, it's tough. The Rockies really are on thin ice when it's a close game late, and Urman or John Gray's got to step off in the sixth or the seventh, and you're kind of holding on to a 1-run lead. If the Rockies are going to be successful in Houston, it's because they're building multi-run leads early and using the strengths of their starting pitching.
One thing that the Astros do have going for them that they didn't have in Colorado is Yordan Alvarez will be in the lineup. He will be, I know back then, I don't think he was playing a lot of outfield. Now he is. He played a lot of outfield versus the Giants, versus the Dodgers, and now he was a little sore because he hasn't played that much outfield a lot recently. But those Giants, that lineup is annoying. I
don't get it. It really doesn't make any sense. Like, nothing about them screams. I mean, they have the names, but you're like, those names were great 5 years ago, but yet here they are, 71 wins in baseball. It's the Giants. Literally at this point, you just kind of shrug and you're just like, I guess.
Yeah, they really were the team that I thought would have a fall off. They started hot. I didn't think they would do a full-on Seattle Mariners, but I didn't know that they would stay where they are. And what's interesting is I was watching MLB Network tonight, and they were like updating the standings. And Plesac and the guys were talking about, dude, Cincinnati is right on the heels of the Padres for the second wild card spot. And people are talking now, can the Padres possibly miss? Where I've even had them possibly vying for the World Series with as hot as they've been at times, but they've been dealing with injuries. Their pitching's been kind of up and down. And so that AL West, if you guys could be competitive in that division, imagine a 4-team race. That's a hard division to be a part of. That's when you're like, hey, do you think we could switch to maybe a different division next year? Just because those teams are so strong right at top, and San Diego's fighting for their playoff lives right now.
Well, that's the thing when you kind of look at it as a Rockies fan, as much as you want to be competitive, it's so good at the top right now. That's why you were just with the trade deadline and whatever happens during this offseason, that the team is kind of planning for a more, let's see what happens 2 to 3 years from now. I mean, the Dodgers have 4 Cy Youngs and 4 MVPs. The Giants are winning 71 games and play well and have a really hard ballpark to play in. And they're one of the teams that has great success against the Rockies. And you're right, the Padres have to step it up. I thought the Padres not getting another starter for them was a big mistake. I thought they for sure would have gone after another arm. And I don't know if the Rockies – I wouldn't have been surprised if I thought when Story was going to get dealt, it was going to be a Story Gray combo. I think teams wanted, they were going to maximize, get that bat, get that shortstop, someone you can play, and then get that good for starter, because John Gray can fill in as a 3rd through 5 starter no matter what. He's a great third arm, I think, for any teams, and he succeeds at the strikeout, which is something I think that's important to remember when you're talking about John Gray. And if the Coors Field and all that for pitchers, he gets people to swing and miss. You can't take advantage of big outfields and altitude if you're not putting the bat on the ball. So I think the Padres should be worried, because the Reds are playing really great ball, and the Reds division isn't all that good. So I mean, who knows what can happen? I mean, but I do think you could see a 4-team race in the NL for not only division and wild card spots one day. I think there's a lot of good teams in there. It's always going to be tough for the Rockies. It always has been, but that's why you got to be cut. It's kind of why I think the Rockies just need to they need to step it up. And that comes down to ownership, I think. And
what? Yeah. You know what? Just imagine John Gray just decides to bring his own car down from Colorado, and he didn't go to RockAuto.com to get that parts he needs, so he can't make it to the ballpark tomorrow. And then the Astros, then they have to start somebody else, like maybe Paul Holden, and then Astros light him up. So it's all because he didn't go to RockAuto.com. Tell him about that, Brett.
I knew this was going to be a RockAuto.com ad. So John Gray needs to go to RockAuto.com. Paul, you need to go to RockAuto.com. Whether you drive a Jeep, a minivan, whether you drive a land yacht from the 70s, it doesn't matter. You type in your make, your model, your year, they have it. Why go to a store why deal with the guys at the counter that tell you they can't get something for months, or they're going to upcharge you because you're not a professional mechanic? Like the average everyday Joes, like us three on the show, or you guys or girls listening, if you need to do it soon, do it right, and do it cheap, go to rockauto.com. 30, 50, sometimes 100% less than what you would pay in a retail chain store. I think it's uber important these days, especially with the economy and prices and gas prices going up. Why would you want to spend the most money you could when you can save all the money you can? 20 years owned by a family, easily navigable website, and phenomenally, they are reliably low on their prices. So check out rockauto.com. When you go there, when you type in, where did you hear about us box, type in Locked On Astros and let them know that we sent you. They have the most reliable prices, reliably, easily navigable website, all the parts you'll ever need at rockauto.com. Hey, Eric, I want to get to this. Someone asked about Brantley. Okay. And I just looked the injury update on both Brantley and Montero. They are both probable for the 10th. So August 10th, which is, if you're listening today, which is the 10th, we're recording on the 9th. Okay. If you're listening on the 10th, they are probable for the game to be able to play. They may not play. Brantley may rest another day. Who knows, depending on how he feels. But Brantley looks like it's more like just a day-to-day thing, and Montero as well. So that is a welcome sign for both of those guys.
At the time of recording, we still don't know anything about Alex Bregman. Yesterday, they said they're going to talk to him and see how he feels, see how he's responding, and they're hopefully he'll be in the lineup, but there's no promises. So
yeah,
I think we're going to find out a lot more come closer to like maybe noon or 3:00 on Tuesday. I think that's when we'll hear a lot more once Dusty Baker kind of announces everything. But something a lot of people are complaining about around the trade deadline, we'll talk about your trade deadline situation in a second, Paul, but was the Astros bullpen. And the Astros did fix the bullpen situation, but the starting situation has kind of gone downhill a little bit. But I think that's going to kind of fix it. But the Astros bullpen since the trade deadline has a 2.16 ERA. The Astros bullpen since All-Star break has a 3.47 ERA. The Astros rotation since the All-Star break has a 4.75 ERA. So it's like the problems were here in the bullpen, and the rotation was like this. Now it's just kind of gone like that. But some could say that the rotation was carrying the load for the bullpen all year. Now they're kind of hitting a brick wall. I don't think this is a long-term thing. I think this is just a phase. They'll get over it. And so
it's kind of baseball. It's a long season. I mean, and especially when you're at a team like the Astros, it's like, it's not always going to be at that first place elite level. I mean, you have to go through ebbs and flows. It just kind of happens, especially when it comes to something like pitching. Like, pitchers have off days, and sometimes they come at real bad times, and sometimes it takes a start or two to shake it off. I mean, Herman had 3 bad starts, didn't even get past 2 innings one of his starts earlier in the year, and he ends up being an all-star and still a really big bright spot for the team.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think when you look at teams, you look back a few years back, that Cleveland Indians team that won 22 games or something like that in a row, or they went on this massive win streak, and everybody expected the Indians, they got white hot, but man, they got so hot that towards the end of the season, they just hit the playoffs and they got knocked out. And so some of this, I think too, struggle is good. And a championship team learns something about itself in the struggles, because if you're always good and always dominate, and that's the one thing I would warn against the Giants, because they've been on top. They really haven't had to, because the Dodgers and the Padres have been very streaky and the Giants have been consistent. Who knows? All it takes is a team to get white hot when the playoffs get around,
right?
And watch out, because then they'll start beating teams like us. I think if this team can go into the playoffs with everybody healthy, I don't see anybody other than the White Sox on the American League side posing a real threat to this lineup. Another team could get hot and make it a really good series. The Rays are the only other team that I would really kind of worry about, just because they're always a darn good competitive team when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And one team that might be interesting in terms of if they get hot at the right time, if the Blue Jays are able to just out hit everybody late
Yeah.
in the year, if they're able to lock into hitting and take advantage of bad starting performances or bad bullpen performances, I mean, that's a team that can score runs on you very, very quickly. So I think the
Yeah,
AL is going to
especially
be
with Springer.
right. Yeah,
He's on fire right now, and gosh, man, he is loving it right now.
right. Yep, he
But
is
we
absolutely
love
loving it.
Chas McCormick in Houston.
I saw in the chat though, one of the questions was Correa or Story. If with heading into the offseason, if there was an opportunity, where would you guys like the Astros to go if they did have a shot at both of them?
Correa all day. Not like they said, nothing against Story, but Correa is the Astros. I know Jose Altuve is the face of the Astros, but with the whole scandal and everything last year, Carlos Correa became the heart of the team, especially after George Springer left in the offseason. He just kind of he kind of stood up for the team. He kind of took on the whole Dodgers team. He was kind of like Jon Snow against all the everybody, and that's just kind of how Carlos Correa became. I know you don't pay a guy because of that, but he's the guy who will take on anybody, and he took on Joe Kelly, and that was a big moment. I know they were talking about in chat earlier about hitting a home run off of Joe Kelly against the Dodgers. Yes, the Dodgers won that game, but that was a big moment for not just Carlos Correa, but just what it meant for Astros fans. So
Right.
Carlos
Yeah.
Correa has been that guy for the Astros. We already lost George Springer. It would suck to lose Carlos Correa. Now, if he goes somewhere, would I love to have a Story? Sure. But I think that the Astros would love to have Correa.
Yeah, I think Correa's always won. I think 1A could easily be a Story. I think because of his age and the price. I mean, he wouldn't garner as much as a Correa would. But Correa is, like Eric said, he is this team. When I talk to other Locked On hosts or when I talk to people in radio that are in other towns, they were like, I don't see Carlos Correa in any other uniform. Like George Springer, he left. Like he looks great in the Blue Jays uniform. I know that pains me and people to say. I mean, I've got pictures and autographs where we met George Springer. I mean, he was the heart and soul of this team. But Holden, I've even said this. I really think that if Carlos Correa doesn't sign with the Astros, that this will be as big a swing and miss for this Astros team and this generation of Astros fans as Nolan Ryan was when we didn't sign Nolan Ryan. And yes, they are at two different points in their career. Nolan was much older. Nobody knew what kind of tear he would go on once he got to Arlington, but he should be a Houston Astro in the Hall of Fame. He shouldn't be a Texas Ranger. I mean, just hands down, it's almost criminal that he's wearing that T on his hat because growing up, Nolan Ryan and the Astros were synonymous with each other. And we didn't get to get Mike Scott to the Hall of Fame. His career wasn't long enough, but he was just as dominant in a short period of time. Carlos Correa, I think, has to remain an Astro. I think the fans will not necessarily riot, but they'll be very upset. And it will be a huge PR mop-up job if they're not able to sign him. And
I think that Springer was I know what you're saying, but Springer was the guy during the whole, we're losing 100 games a season for 3 years. And Springer was that ray of hope. And
true.
I think everybody knew he was leaving. That was the difference. And
yeah.
So nobody really knows that about Correa. But before we move on from Correa, I do want to tell him that he's struggling right now, Paul. You're facing the Astros at a good time. He's slashing 165 right now, 234, 295, 528 OPS with 14 hits and only 7 extra base hits, 8 RBIs in his last 94 plate appearances, which is 23 games since July 6. So he's still ranked third in B WAR against position players in AL with 4.7 and third in defensive WAR at 1.7. So he's still having a good year, but he's in the midst of a big slump. So great players, they break out of those great big slumps. Right. So what I'm saying is I hope they do it against John Gray tomorrow. So let's get back to this series. What do y'all think about today's game versus the Rockies? John Gray versus Odorizzi, my favorite pitcher.
I think the Rockies are going to come out, swinging. I think they're going to try and take their aggressive approach that they were bringing there in Colorado and continue to capitalize on that. I think they want to continue to score runs as best they can. And if they have an opportunity to jump over on a pitcher that's struggling, the bats are hot right now, and they've been mixing it up. You're not going to see Raimel Tapia tomorrow, maybe not even this series, as he's dealing with a toe issue. So there's going to be some fluctuation there, and the Rockies have been getting some production from all sorts of names. Sam Hilliard is a bench player that's been putting the ball over the wall, and Connor Joe has been a really, really great fill-in player for the Rockies. So odds are he's going to be in the lineup tomorrow. So I think the Rockies, while they got to play well, they have the ability and the momentum right now to make some noise. But I'm going to be realistic here. It could be very possible that this team finds themselves still struggling on the road, going 0-2. But I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to call for a split. Rockies taking the game tonight and losing the day game tomorrow. That's going to be my prediction for the series.
Okay, I don't think that's a bad prediction. I know Odorizzi, a lot of fans don't, when they wake up and they're thinking they're like daily affirmations and confident thoughts, they don't pretend that they're Jake Odorizzi because of his struggles. And so he doesn't strike a lot of confidence in Astros fans. But at some point, some of these struggling players, Altuve's even been scrapping a lot. Altuve in extra innings even laid down a bunt to hope to try to push a guy over, get a guy in scoring position. And of course, he pushed it way too hard and got thrown out. So he hasn't been doing well. Yordan Alvarez has been hitting the cover off the ball. Literally, he's been crushing it. Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. I squared. And so it's just one of those things where I think this could easily go Astros 2-0. I think at worst it goes 1-1. Like you said, if the Rockies bats are hot and the pitchers aren't pitching, I mean, I don't care who you're playing. I mean, they're going to hit dingers. And Minute Maid Park is a bandbox. We all know. I mean, we don't call it the juice box just because of Minute Maid, because it is a compact stadium.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I just want to say this about the whole Carlos Correa thing. Whether he goes or stays, I don't think that Carlos Correa is going to leave me with a bad taste in my mouth about Carlos Correa. I think I've garnered enough respect for him and what he's done that it's not going to, in other words, I'm going to hate that he's gone. I literally was looking at the field. I was at a game with my son a couple weeks ago, and I looked at my son. I said, this is the last season that you may see Altuve and Correa standing next to each other. And that's really hard to think about. Of course, my son's not into it like I am, but I was like really thinking about that. Like, this is weird. It's like the sun comes up, Correa and Altuve are the middle of our infield. But I'm not going to be mad at him, because if the Astros don't come off their offer that they initially offered and offer him more and give him more what he's worth, I don't blame him if the money's there, because if anybody else was in his shoes, they would do the same thing. And that's when it gets tough. That's when it gets tough, because fans are loyal. You should be loyal to me. And to answer one question that someone popped up, I do believe Justin Verlander and Zach Greinke are gone. I don't see them coming back at all.
Yeah, you could go with the sign them to an 8-year deal and then trade them and $50 million to another team to play for them route as well, with the face of your franchise. If you want to go that route, it's a bit of a painful one, but it's one that you can. It's an option you can take. Apparently, I feel you completely. It's really hard when you have players that you love, and especially with Nolan, the fans didn't even get to celebrate Nolan. We didn't.
Yeah.
No Rockies fan got to say goodbye to Nolan Arenado. Fans weren't in the stands last year, and the last memory they have of watching him was the 2019 season, when the team really fell apart in the second half and didn't do anything. So they went from a really frustrated, as the fans, the last time they watched their team was one that underperformed and desperately needed a move to be made at the deadline, into a pandemic shortened season that saw Nolan get hurt and not play all the way, to a trade that happened before the season started, before anyone got to go. And the next time they got to see Nolan was in Cardinal red or baby blue or whatever colors they were wearing, whatever colors they end up wearing. It's tough. I mean, it's really hard losing players that you love. And especially for free agency, like you said, is one thing. I will not be upset at all if Trevor Story goes out and signs a great deal with a great team. Rooting for him always. Go out and get that money. That's what they work for. That's why they're here. I mean, obviously you want them to win championships, but at the end of the day, that they're there to get paid too. So I'm rooting for them no matter what. As I'm always rooting for players to get their money.
Yeah, in the game 2 matchup, it's gonna be Framber Valdez versus Antonio Senzatela. Okay, so what do you know about him? He's got a 2-8 record. That looks pretty.
He's not gonna overpower you with a bunch of fastballs and junk. It's going to be that he's a pitcher that relies on his defense. He's a ground ball guy. He's looking to get the ball. The ball is going to be in play a lot, and he's going to rely on that defense to work behind him. And he can be successful. When Senza is on, he is hard to square up. He'll get a lot of weak contact, a lot of ground balls, which the Rockies can scoop up because their infield defense is pretty sharp. They got a really good infield there behind him. But Senza, if he's missing, like I said, he's not a pitcher that's going to hit you with a knee buckling curveball. He's not going to blow something by you. It's again, that's where I'm looking at that matchup where I'm like, if the Astros are looking for a slump buster, he's a pitcher that it can happen to. But Senza, when he is on, he is very, very tough to hit.
And Valdez is one of those pitchers. You'll know in the first inning what type of day he's having, but then in the second inning the other day, he kind of fell apart. But I think he's the type of guy that will go out and pitch another 4 scoreless innings. So I think that the Astros will bounce back. I think the Astros are going to come in and realize, oh crap, we can't keep on losing to these cover years, bad teams. So they're going to have to come out and mean some business, but then also it depends on who's in the Astros lineup, because are they going to sit Brantley? Is Alex Bregman returning? How sore is Yordan Alvarez still? So there's a lot to be determined, and we'll probably have to talk about this on tomorrow's Locked On Astros podcast. So Paul, thank you again for joining. Yeah. Where can they find you on Twitter? I know it's right there, but for the people on audio.
We are at LO Rockies for the show page, and I'm at Paul Holden 33. So if you want to follow along there, and thanks so much for having me on the show. Thanks to all the comments as well. I want to hello to the chat there. It's super cool that you guys got all these people chatting and stuff. So it's always fun to be here, and wish you could do it more, but unfortunately no AL West crossovers next year, which is kind of a bummer to me.
But hey, you know what? We could still have you on. We enjoy having you on, and we appreciate it. And as always, I mean, who hates the Rockies? I mean, the Rockies are just like fun. They're just like a team that, like, you don't root against the Rockies. I mean, they're the Colorado Rockies. They've got mountains in the background. The home of John Denver. I mean, come on.
And I'm sure for Astros fans, there's another NL West team that they can go ahead and save the remorse and those thoughts and feelings. We'll continue to sit in 4th place here and have some fun when we cross paths.
Yeah, for sure. So, guys, I know I didn't do this before the show, but continue to subscribe to Locked On Astros podcast on YouTube. We're continuing to grow and keep on liking, like World Traveler keeps on saying. And betting on the Astros and the Rockies doesn't have to be a guessing game. If you listen to new Locked On Bets podcast hosted by your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling, get daily picks, blowout special, round team favorite picks, and Lee Sterling's lock of the day. Follow the Locked On Bets podcast brought to you by betonline.ag, wherever you get your podcast. And Brett and I will be back tomorrow to talk about the Astros crushing the ball against John Gray and Jake Odorizzi pitching a no-hitter, apparently. So you've been listening to the Locked On Astros podcast, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.